What's up, guys? How are you all doing? I know it's been a little while since I recorded a game. Been busy with usual life stuff and haven't had a lot of time to devote to Magic Online, but I have still been thinking about it. And a couple days ago, I got a message from Nate, an urgent message, where he said, there's a new card out there in the ecosystem that you need to take a look at that I think is a hidden sleeper bomb. And I was quite obviously intrigued by that. The card is a new card that was printed in the Commander 2020 set, and it is this card right here, Deflecting SWAT. I know that it's getting a fair amount of attention on competitive groups and stuff, so I don't know if I would quite call it a hidden sleeper. I think obviously anybody that's ever played with the card Misdirection understands how powerful a pitch spell that redirects stuff can be, and Deflecting SWAT is actually better in one very important sense, and that's the fact that it also works on abilities, and there's plenty of targeted abilities in Commander that are absolutely worth misdirecting. I think probably the most obvious ones are Wasteland and Strip Mine, but there's lots of targeted Planeswalker activations, either targeting your opponent or targeting a permanent in play. And of course, targeted spells can be completely decisive. Things like Vindicate, for example, or Maelstrom Pulse, or Naturalize or Disenchant, and so on. And having this card available even at 3 mana, honestly, is quite a powerful effect, because unlike cards like Reverberation, the various red forks, the card gets redirected, so it's essentially a counter copy for 3 mana. And obviously, if you have your commander in play, it's even better. And I wasn't honestly sure whether this card belongs in a deck like Nin the Pain Artist, which is what immediately came to mind as it's my best red-based deck, or at least a best deck that contains some red, because the deck has such a preponderance of counterspells already, and Deflecting SWAT, while very powerful, is of course more narrow. However, the effect certainly seems like it can be backbreaking, and I think that some testing will really determine whether or not the card belongs in a deck like Nin. I think it's certainly an auto-include and ideally suited to any deck that does not contain blue that has a red element. I think that there's just about... Red is obviously a famous color for lacking interactivity, particularly with regards to interacting on the stack. And having this ability in a mono red deck, like a deck based around Golos or Duretti, is a super, super powerful tool to have at your disposal, because your opponent really does have to consider, particularly if you have your commander in play, they have to always account for this card when they make a decisive play. So for example, your opponent taps out to cast Golos, and you're sitting there with Treachery in your hand, and you think, aha, I'm just going to Treachery as Golos, and I just win the game on the spot. But now, because of Deflecting SWAT, you really do have to change your game plan quite a bit, because if they do in fact have Deflecting SWAT, you end up throwing Treachery on one of your own guys. And while that doesn't in fact allow you to untap, you may be losing the game if that Golos gets to attack you just one time. So you have to really take that into account. So I think the card will really alter the ecosystem a lot. Whether or not it winds up in Nin specifically, I think it's worth more testing. And of course, like most cards like this that are kind of hungry for narrow targets, its power level goes way up when you're playing in multiplayer. So always consider that. I don't know if it belongs in 1v1. It may be one of those cards that I don't use in 1v1, but will automatically sideboard in for multiplayer over a more clunky card like Rewind, which is currently the card that I've removed from Nin. So I only actually have had the card in my deck for a couple of games, and I happen to have this game against Clan Barriar, this guy right here, who is playing the ubiquitous Golos. And I do have the card early in the game, so I thought that this was an interesting test game to test. Actually, no, I don't think I have Deflecting SWAT in this game. Actually, this is just a general good Nin game in the first place. I have Deflecting SWAT in the next game that I'm going to be recording, so I am talking about it mainly because I'm playing this deck because I wanted to test out Deflecting SWAT. In that, Nate is advocating for the card a lot in Breya, and I think it certainly is better in the Breya deck, mainly because the Breya deck does not run the crazy critical mass of counters, and having this card is pretty effective. Plus, if your opponent plays a Deflecting SWAT on your card, you can swat it right back to their thing, back to the intended target, which can be very, very decisive. I'm sure that there'll be some crazy interactions involving Deflecting SWAT with cards like Ancestral Visions and stuff, and of course I'm already having post-traumatic stress about tapping out end of turn to use Nin the Pain Artist on one of my own guys or on herself, only to have my opponent Deflecting SWAT the ability onto one of their guys, which just gives me shudders to even think about. Anyway, this is a good game though, and definitely worth recording. Small disclaimer, unfortunately the game is going to bug out about 7-8 turns in, but I meticulously wrote down everything that happens after the break point with the archiving, and I will give you guys just a chronicling of how the game unfolds from that point onward, and hopefully you'll still get a sense. But I think most of the decisive moments in this game come early, and that's why I thought it was YouTube worthy. So I'm keeping this hand. Dak Faden, obviously an insane card to start with, particularly against a Golos deck. Even though I don't have red, I expect that I will draw red pretty quickly. I've got early defense in the form of both Counterspell and Spell Pierce going first, so it feels like definitely a keeper solid to me. I'm not positive I'm going first. And I have Shackles, of course, and 2 islands, which means I can just steal Golos and the Karn Liberator late game bomb. All right, yeah, I think he actually is first this game. Yeah, he is. He plays a Bayou and has no subsequent play, which makes me happy he mulliganed as well. All right, let's just draw some red, and red on schedule. Shivan Reef arrives. All right, I'm feeling very fortified here, fully intending to use Spell Pierce. Even though I've got Dak Faden in play, these Golos decks tend to run a fair amount of artifact-based acceleration and a fair amount of artifacts. So if he plays something like a Signet turn 2, I'm definitely going to just Spell Pierce that, just to buy myself some more time. All right. Let's see what he's up to. All right, Badlands. And then Mana Crypt on the stack. I could imagine if he had the discipline to not play this turn 1 and he waited until he had 2 lands so he could play around Spell Pierce. Pretty sick. Yep, can't counter it. And he's got a follow-up of Oracle of Moldea. Jesus Christ. With Hull Breach on top. Even more insane. And he's got a Karoo as well. Man, these lands are so insane with Oracle. So he goes from having 1 mana in play to 5. And of course, since Nin runs the full-on containment strategy, the one primary way that you can contain your opponent is through their mana development. So already in a bunch of trouble. But at least I've got Dak Faden as a way to deal with this mana crypt. I draw Urza. Very, very nice to see that. I'm very glad to have a counterspell here to just stop the assumed Golos next turn. Let's see what he does. He reveals a Sky Shroud Ranger, which is a bit weird. All right, 5 mana. Yep, that's Golos. Of course, I'm going to counterspell this just because even him getting a card like Strip Mine could be potentially devastating. I just can't let anything through. I just need to buy myself some time. He's got another land, so he's at 6 mana, meaning Golos could come down next turn. Fortunately, I've got the Dak Faden in the wings to steal away the Mana Crypt. I know he has Hull Breach in his hand, but really, what can I do about that? Sure, he can spend his 2 mana to Hull Breach his own card, which isn't the worst thing in the world, and I'll lose Dak, but at least I know his next draw isn't particularly impactful either. That is very impactful. This is a Kama Primal Calamity. Yeah, this freaking ridiculous dinosaur that whenever I play against it with Nin, it just seems inevitably my opponent is always able to just slam this thing and I don't have a counterspell for it. It's happened a bunch of times. It's pretty awful, even though it's unlikely. So obviously he's Hull Breaching away Mana Crypt, which of course makes sense. He's got Sky Shroud Ranger, but no more land, which is nice, and no land on top. So my priority is really just getting the Oracle away from him before he's able to get more mana into play. And that should rein in both the now 7 mana Golos as well as the Zakama. Take another, well, actually, Dak's dying here. That's fine. All right. Ooh, that is very timely. That is amazing. Amazing card to have right now, particularly because I'm staring at this Zakama. And even being able to steal the Oracle is phenomenal, although I'd obviously prefer to do that with Shackles. So this turn I'm just going to play Urza. There's no temptation to play Nin the Pain Artist right now. It doesn't really accomplish much, and I don't feel like the fact he only has 2 cards in hand, his deck seems to be pretty creature heavy, makes me feel like it's unlikely I need to keep the Spell Person available. And actually, I guess I can do it anyway since Urza comes equipped with a Mox Sapphire. So feeling pretty good. I have 5 mana next turn to use Shackles. And let's see what he reveals. Still has a Guildgate. All right, well, that's fine. He's going to play the Guildgate, obviously. And then there's an Ulvenwald Hydra. Interesting. It allows you to search for a land card, just like Golos. This thing is like a 6 mana Golos that can be a lot bigger than 3/5. So he's clearly probably got some combos in here, Dark Depths and so on. Dark Depths, Thespian Stage, and who knows what other ones. Cursor of Krufix comes down. That's just redundant with Oracle, so I'm not particularly concerned about that. And he can't really attack, which is good. All right. So I'm stuck on mana here, and I decide that even though it means that I can't play the Shackles and use it right away, it may make the most sense. Or I'm sorry, yeah, there's definitely no reason to Treachery, even though it means I can untap my mana and go something like Talisman of Creativity and play Nin. I kind of feel like keeping the Treachery in the wings here for one of these bigger monsters that comes down later is probably more important. And so I'm going to go with the guaranteed quality of the Shackles right now to steal a 2 power thing, rather than worrying about trying to grab a 9 with it later. All right, and of course I need more mana in play. Unfortunately, I just flip over a Condescend, which isn't the end of the world, but not that bad either. His mana is rapidly, like I could easily be playing against 8, 9 mana next turn, possibly even more depending on how this goes. So he draws the Hydra, and I know his hand now contains at least Zakama and the Hydra. Boilerworks, oh god, the combo of that is just insane. So he gets to play that off the top with the Courser. He taps for a black mana, and then there's a Zendikar Resurgent, which is a pretty insane card, kind of a combination of both Mana Flare and whatever what is it, the Beast Master or whatever. The thing allows you to draw a card whenever you play a creature. He's going to play Boilerworks. Okay. Let's see what else is coming. That's 5 mana. That's pretty scary. Hour of Promise. Okay, so that's going to reshuffle away the Zendikar Resurgent, but it is going to put 2 more land of his choice into play. I mean, don't have to worry about the zombies, but yeah, this is getting really, really scary. I know that he's got that crazy Zakama in his hand too. All right, he gets 2 land, and what are they going to be? Oh, wow. Okay, so he gains 2 life, and unfortunately, this card right here was not on top of his deck. This card was, I believe, what was it? It might have just, it might have been Ancient Tomb. I'm certain it was something like that. It was definitely not Wayward Swordtooth, which may not even been his deck. However, by putting Urborg and Cabal Coffers into play, this is totally insane off this card right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 mana coming down. Yeah, he definitely has a land on top of his deck. So there's 7 mana available, and I guess plus he had 1 in his hand, right? Which he can replay. Yeah, using the Skyshire Ranger. So the Bayou comes down against another life. So it's just those 2 cards right now. It's the Hydra and Zakama in his hand. But look at his mana. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Plus there's an Ancient Tomb on top, so 8. Plus the Coffers would be 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. He has 16 mana next turn. 16 mana, which is enough mana to not only play Golos for 7 generic, but also immediately activate the ability, which is absolutely terrifying. Because obviously you're running the containment strategy. It is impossible to contain the opponent with cards like Condescend and Spell Pierce when your opponent has access to 16 mana a turn. It could get really, really ugly really fast. So I draw Condescend. There's a Mana Confluence on top, which is phenomenal to see. And a Steam Dance. I'm so rewarded for stealing the Oracle. I get 2 land in play. And there's a Tezzeret. Okay, so this is absolutely a crossroads for this game. Now, keep in mind, I believe that there's an Ancient Tomb sitting on top of his deck right now, not a Wayward Swordtooth. Given the situation, given the fact that I have 6 land and a Construct in play, what is the choice here? What do you do? There's a lot of different options. Obviously, you can play Talisman of Creativity and play Nin. You can sit back on Condescend mana and Spell Pierce mana. You can play Karn Liberated. You can Treachery something. So many different choices. So to me, this was kind of the toughest part of the toughest turn of the game. I spent a bunch of time thinking about this and even texted him to let him know that I was thinking about it and calculating his mana, and he said, I have no idea how much mana I have in play, but it's a lot. So give you guys a little bit of time to think about what the play might be. Maybe 5, 10 more seconds to consider it. Obviously, that's considerably less time than I had during the game, but hopefully it's enough time to consider the options. All right, time's up. So basically, as the Nin player, your long-term game plan really is about mana containment, and that's never going to happen if your opponent has access to 16 or more mana on their subsequent turns, particularly with a commander that makes mana whenever they spam it in crazy bombs like the Hydra and the ridiculous dinosaur in hand. So even though I could steal the Zakama right away, or I could say play Karn Liberated and nuke a card out of his hand to get one of those 2 things, if Zakama comes down, he gets to untap all of this insane mana with a just gargantuan amount of mana in his hand. He even has enough mana to go, because he has 19 mana or 16 mana, he could literally play the 7 mana Golos, followed up with Zakama, untapping all of the land, including the land that he put into play, and get a whole bunch of crazy Zakama interactions and just blow my board to bits. So it's a really, really terrifying situation, and I feel like the only play that makes any sense at all after considering many things is to play Karn and cut off a ton of his mana. And the way we accomplish that is we use Karn on a Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth. So if that was your answer, you guessed correctly. You win the prize. So you can see me tapping and considering various options. Finally, I play Karn. And this cuts off so much mana. I mean, it's 1 mana plus it shuts off all these. This is removing. He goes down to what? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, that cuts off literally, well, he's going to have the tomb next turn. It cuts off 7 mana. Pretty insane. And obviously no reason to attack, so I pass the turn back here. Okay, and this card was not Swan Song. This card was actually, what does he cast here? He casts his, the Zakama is coming down this turn. This, I think, was, it might have been a disenchant, actually, some sort of disenchant style effect. But when he played the Ancient Tomb off the top, he had 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 mana exactly, which is enough to cast his Zakama, which is what he did. The game is not going to progress from here, so I'm going to just have to narrate, and you're going to have to use your imagination. So he taps out and he plays Zakama. He untaps all of his mana. He uses Zakama's artifact destruction ability to destroy the Vidalcan Shackles, which gets back Oracle, but he doesn't reveal a land. He then, oh, that's right, that's when he reveals the, I think he reveals the disenchant. But instead of waiting a turn for the disenchant, he plays his Golos and he gets Maze's End into play. And then he attacks me. Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, he reveals the Maze's End. He actually does not play the Golos, I'm sorry. He plays the Ulvenwald Hydra and he searches up a land that way, and the Hydra comes down as an 8/8. And he gets the Maze's End that way. Then he attacks with these two, both of them at Karn. Obviously, I don't have the Oracle anymore. I decided to block and kill the Skyshard Ranger over just bouncing off the Courser, so that kills a creature and it drops Karn down to 0. So on my turn, I'm rewarded for playing this Treachery. I immediately play the Treachery. That untaps 5 land. I play this Tezzeret off the top and search up Mana Crypt. The Mana Crypt comes into play, and that combined with the Steam Vents allows me to use the 3 damage ability off Zakama to kill the Oracle of Moldea, which of course is now on his side now that Shackles is gone. And that leaves me with, and I use Karn to hit his hand. So Karn goes back up to 5 counters, and I currently have Urza and my token, and I have Zakama in play. So on his turn, he plays another land, and I think he has a Mana Drain sitting on top of his library revealed by Courser, and he attacks me with the 10/10 Hydra. At which point I have the option to trade his Zakama plus my Construct token, or well, not trade. I can double block and take down the Hydra, but at the cost of losing the Zakama, which I feel, because I have Mana Confluence and access to all 3 abilities, it feels to me like it's just way too valuable to let die. So instead, I chump block with the Construct. He follows up by playing Golos, and on my turn, I untap, and I, let's see here. Yeah, that's right. I use Zakama's ability to blow up the Golos that he just played, and I use Karn to exile the Hydra. And all he currently has in play is, or all he has in hand is nothing, and the Mana Drain is sitting on play. And I play Talisman of Creativity and follow up with Nin the Pain Artist. And on his turn, he shuffles away. He's got a fetch land. That's right. He had a Wooded Foothills off the top of his deck, which he played off the Courser. He shuffles away at the end of the turn the disenchant and reveals a Scroll Rack, which is kind of interesting. So he untaps, plays a Scroll Rack, which reveals Ugin the Spirit Dragon off the top of his deck. And he uses Scroll Rack for 1, puts back the card that he drew, which I guess is the Mana Drain, and he attempts to play the Ugin the Spirit Dragon with Ancient Tomb and Selesnya Guildgate untapped. But fortunately, oh, and then the top card after that is Red Elemental Blast, which he's main decking. However, because of that play 3 or 4 turns earlier where I used Karn to destroy or to exile the Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth, after playing his Ugin the Spirit Dragon, he only has 3 mana available, and I have, I think, 5 available, which gives him the ability to Condescend for 4, which counters the Ugin the Spirit Dragon. And now facing Nin plus Tezzeret plus Talisman and Mana Crypt, still with Urza in play, an active Karn, and a Nin the Pain Artist in play that can shoot for 7 or 8 cards. My opponent looks at the board for a little while and rightfully concedes the game, and we win it. So very, very happy to win the game, even though it bugged out. I'm sorry that I had to complete the last maybe 4 or 5 turns through a narration. Hopefully I did the game justice. But I thought it was a really, really cool game, just as a return to the Nin deck to see how I could be pressured early by that Mana Crypt and having to make a number of different decisions regarding the theft. But I thought that this was a really cool game to sort of demonstrate the containment principle about how, as long as you restrain your opponent's mana with a control deck and you limit their ability to do multiple things in a turn, you can often greatly fortify your position, even if you don't necessarily have the answers in hand, and buy yourself the time to actually deal with the threats as they unfold one by one. That is a quintessential component to playing any control game, and was really demonstrated well in this. I've got another Nin game coming up that's quite a bit better, at least in terms of the replay cooperating, and look forward to that in the next video. Hope you guys enjoyed that one. See you soon.